The lights inside the Grand Theater glowed like tiny stars. Hundreds of people filled the seats, waiting for the special charity event to begin. On the stage stood Keanu Reeves. The audience cheered loudly. Some people raised their phones. Others simply smiled. Keanu waved politely. He never seemed comfortable with too much attention, but he appreciated every person who had come. The event was called Stories of Hope. Its purpose was simple. People from different backgrounds would share moments that changed their lives. Keanu had agreed to speak because he believed that everyone carried a story worth hearing. He adjusted the microphone. "Good evening, everyone," he said softly. The crowd erupted into applause. He smiled. "Thank you for being here tonight. Sometimes we think the world changes through big events, but I've learned that sometimes one kind word, one small act, can change an entire life." The audience became quiet. He continued, "When I was younger, I met people who helped me without expecting anything in return. They reminded me that kindness matters." People nodded. Some even wiped tears from their eyes. Keanu's words always felt honest. That was why millions admired him, not because he was famous, but because he seemed real. Then something unexpected happened. From somewhere in the back of the theater, a very soft whisper floated through the crowd. It was so quiet that almost no one noticed. Almost no one, but Keanu did. He stopped speaking. The audience looked confused. Silence filled the room again. Whisper, a weak voice, "Please, don't forget me." Keanu's eyes narrowed. He looked toward the upper rows. People followed his gaze. The whisper had disappeared. One of the organizers approached him. "Everything okay?" she asked. Keanu nodded slowly. "Yes," but he wasn't sure because the voice had sounded frightened. Lonely. As if someone desperately needed help. He continued his speech, yet he could not stop thinking about the whisper. After 10 more minutes, his presentation ended. The audience stood and applauded. The theater shook with cheers. Keanu thanked everyone and stepped off the stage, but instead of heading to the VIP lounge, he looked toward the back rows. "Excuse me," he said to an organizer. "Did you hear someone whispering?" The woman looked surprised. "No, a child. Maybe." She shook her head. "I didn't hear anything." Keanu stared toward the dark seats. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. He began walking. The organizers followed. "Mr. Reeves, your interview starts in 10 minutes. He kept walking. "Can we do it later?" "But the reporters are waiting." "I'll be back." The woman sighed. This was typical Keanu. When something mattered to him, schedules became unimportant. He reached the back of the theater. Most seats were empty. Cleaning staff had already begun working. He looked carefully. Nothing. No child. No frightened person. No one. Then a tiny sound. Cough. He turned. Behind the final row sat a little girl. She couldn't have been older than 10. She wore an oversized sweater and held a small backpack. She looked nervous. Her eyes were red. As if she had been crying for a very long time. Keanu slowly approached. The girl lowered her head. "Hi," he said gently. She said nothing. "Are you here with your family?" Silence. The cleaning staff paused and watched. The little girl finally spoke. "I didn't mean to interrupt." Her voice was barely audible. Keanu crouched, so they were at eye level. "You didn't interrupt anything." She looked up. Her eyes were filled with sadness. "I whispered." "You did." She nodded. "I'm sorry." "Why are you sorry?" "Because people don't like hearing me." Those words hit him like a punch. No child should ever believe that. He sat beside her. "What's your name?" "Sophie." "Nice to meet you, Sophie." "I'm Keanu." A tiny smile appeared. "I know." He laughed softly. "Fair enough." She looked down again. "I didn't have a ticket. How did you get inside?" "My mom works here." One of the employees nearby spoke. "Her mother is one of the cleaners." Keanu nodded. That explained everything. He looked back at Sophie. "So, why did you whisper?" The little girl swallowed. "I wanted to ask you something." "What is it?" She hesitated. Then she asked the question. "Do people disappear when everyone forgets them?" The entire hallway became silent. Even the cleaning staff stopped moving. Keanu blinked. He had expected many questions. Not this. He spoke gently. "What makes you ask that?" Tears formed in her eyes. "My dad died last year." Silence. "My mom says we should remember happy things, but I can't remember his voice anymore." A tear rolled down her cheek. And if I forget his voice, does that mean he disappears? No one moved. The room felt heavy. Keanu looked at the little girl and saw real pain. Pain far too big for someone so young. He thought for several seconds. Then he answered, no. She looked at him. No, no. People we love never completely disappear. She stared carefully. Even if I forget things? He nodded. Double quotes. They stay in our hearts, in our choices, in our memories, in the lessons they taught us. She remained silent. But I can't hear him anymore. Keanu's eyes softened. He understood grief. He understood loss. Perhaps better than most. He slowly sat beside her. You know, there are people I miss too. She looked surprised. You? Yes. I thought famous people don't get sad. He smiled sadly. Everyone gets sad. The girl thought about that. Then she whispered, do you ever forget people? He looked toward the stage lights. Sometimes I forget little things, but I never forget how someone made me feel. She looked interested. Really? Really? Another tear rolled down her face. I don't want my dad to disappear. Keanu reached into his pocket. He found a small notebook and a pen. He handed them to her. Then let's make sure he doesn't. She blinked. What? Tell me about him. She looked confused. Right now. Right now. The little girl looked at the notebook. Then she slowly smiled. He loved pancakes. Keanu smiled. Good start. He couldn't sing. They both laughed. But he sang anyway. What else? He made funny faces. Interesting. He always gave me the last cookie. That sounds like a good dad. She nodded. He was, for the next 30 minutes. Sophie talked and talked and talked. She described her father's jokes, his favorite shoes. The way he walked. The songs he liked. How he carried her on his shoulders. How he called her captain. Sophie, Keanu wrote everything. Every single detail. The staff watched quietly. Some were crying because something beautiful was happening. A little girl was bringing someone back to life through memory. When she finished, the notebook was full. Keanu handed it back. Now, he said, you have something special. She held it carefully. What is it? A memory book. She stared at it. When you're afraid of forgetting, add another story. The little girl looked at him with shining eyes. So my dad won't disappear? He smiled. No, because every page keeps him alive. Tears rolled down her cheeks, but this time, they were different tears. Not tears of fear, tears of relief. Suddenly a woman hurried into the hallway. She wore a cleaning uniform. Sophie. The little girl turned. Mom. The woman rushed forward. I'm so sorry. I looked everywhere for you. Then she noticed Keanu. Her eyes widened. Oh my goodness. Mr. Reeves, I'm sorry. She wasn't bothering you, was she? Keanu stood. Not at all. The woman looked embarrassed. I only brought her because I couldn't afford a babysitter tonight. It's okay. She looked at Sophie. What happened? Sophie held up the notebook. We saved Dad. The woman looked confused. Then Sophie hugged her tightly. The mother began to cry. She understood. She understood everything. She looked at Keanu. Thank you. He shook his head. No thanks needed. But the woman insisted. You have no idea what tonight means to her. Keanu looked at Sophie. Perhaps he had an idea. The event organizers approached Mr. Reeves. The reporters had been waiting 45 minutes. He smiled. I know. The organizer looked at the little girl, then at the notebook. Then at Keanu. She finally smiled. I suppose this was more important. Keanu nodded. Much more important. He turned toward Sophie. Captain Sophie. Her eyes widened. You remembered? He smiled. I remember important things. She laughed. Then she whispered, can I ask one more question? Of course. Will I see you again? He paused. He looked at the notebook in her hands. He looked at her mother. Then he smiled. I think we can arrange that. The little girl grinned. For the first time all evening, she looked genuinely happy, but none of them knew something extraordinary was about to happen, because one photographer had secretly captured the entire conversation from across the theater. The picture showed a famous actor sitting on the floor beside a crying child, listening as if nothing else in the world mattered. Within hours, that photo would spread across the internet. Millions of people would ask one question. Who was the little girl beside Keanu Reeves? And the answer would begin a journey that would change not only Sophie's life, but the lives of thousands of grieving families around the world. The next morning, the internet exploded. One photograph was everywhere. It showed Keanu Reeves sitting on the floor of a theater beside a little girl, listening to her as if she were the most important person in the world. Nobody knew the full story. The headlines read, Keanu Reeves stops event for unknown child. Why did Keanu spend 45 minutes talking to one little girl? The photo that has everyone talking. Millions. Shared the image. Thousands. Left comments. Some people said it reminded them of their own losses. Others wondered who the child was. But Keanu never spoke publicly about it. He believed some moments should remain private. Meanwhile, in a small apartment across the city, 10-year-old Sophie sat at the kitchen table. Her notebook rested in front of her. She had already filled 3 more pages. Dad's favorite color. Dad's funny jokes. The time he burned pancakes. Every memory felt precious. Her mother, Emma, watched her carefully for the first time in many months. Sophie looked different. She looked lighter. Hope had returned to her eyes. Suddenly, Emma's phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. Hello? Good morning. My name is Laura. I work with Mr. Keanu Reeves. Emma nearly dropped the phone. She looked at Sophie. What? We were wondering if you and Sophie might like to meet Mr. Reeves again. Emma was speechless. Meet him? Yes. Why? Laura smiled on the other end. He has an idea. 2 days later, Emma and Sophie entered a small CAFE acute. No reporters. No cameras. No bodyguards. Just Keanu sitting at a corner table, wearing a black jacket and drinking coffee. He stood when he saw them. Captain Sophie, the little girl, smiled. You remembered again. He laughed. I said I would. They sat down. Keanu noticed the notebook immediately. It had become thicker. You've been busy. Sophie nodded. Proudly. 22 pages. 22? Maybe 23. He smiled. That's impressive. She looked serious. I don't want Dad to disappear. His expression softened. He won't. A waiter brought hot chocolate for Sophie. Then Keanu reached into his bag. He pulled out another notebook. This one was larger. Blue cover. Blank pages. He placed it on the table. Sophie looked confused. What is that? A new project. What kind? He leaned forward. A memory project. Emma listened carefully. Keanu continued. I've been thinking about our conversation. Sophie nodded. I realized something. There are millions of people who are afraid of forgetting someone they love. The little girl looked surprised. Millions? Millions. She thought about that. So they're sad too. Sometimes silence filled the table. Then she asked, can we help them? The question made Keanu smile. That was exactly what he hoped she would ask. I think we can. Her eyes widened. Really? Really? He opened the blue notebook. The first page read, the memory project. No one disappears when they are remembered. Sophie's mouth opened. You made that? I had some help. She stared at the words. Her eyes slowly filled with tears. It was the first time someone had turned her fear into something hopeful. What does it do? She asked. Keanu smiled. We collect stories. Whose stories? Everyone's. She blinked. Everyone? Anyone who wants to remember someone they love. Emma looked at him. You mean, like a memory book? Yes, but much bigger. He took out his phone. I've already spoken to a few people. He showed them a website. Design. Simple. Warm. Beautiful. At the top were the words. Tell us about someone you never want to forget. Sophie's eyes became enormous. People can write there. They can write stories, upload photos, share memories. She looked amazed. All the dads and moms and grandparents? Yes. And pets. Keanu laughed. Yes. Pets too. Sophie smiled. For several seconds she simply stared at the website. Then she whispered, they won't disappear. No, they'll be remembered. Exactly. She suddenly hugged him. The cafe became silent. Even nearby customers smiled because they could see the little girl's joy. After a minute she pulled away. Can I help? Keanu blinked. Help? With the website? He smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. Her face lit up. I get a job. An important one. What is it? He thought for a moment. Then he said, Chief Memory Officer. Her jaw dropped. That's a real job? It is now. She laughed so hard that even Emma began laughing. For the first time since her husband's death, She felt genuine happiness. Over the next few weeks, something extraordinary happened. The Memory Project launched online. At first, only a few hundred people visited, then a few thousand, then hundreds of thousands. The photograph of Keanu and Sophie had already spread across social media. People discovered the website. They became curious. Then they started sharing stories. A son wrote about his mother who loved gardening. A woman wrote about her grandfather who built wooden toys. A man wrote about his best friend who taught him to ride a bicycle. Messages poured in. Thousands. Then tens of thousands. The website servers nearly crashed. Keanu's team worked day and night. One evening, Sophie visited the office. She wore a tiny badge that read, Chief Memory Officer. Everyone adored her. She sat beside Keanu. How many stories now? He checked. 47,000. She nearly fell from her chair. 47,000. That's right. She looked amazed. So many people miss someone. He nodded. Double quotes, yes. She became quiet. Then she whispered, they're not alone anymore. Keanu looked at her. Children sometimes said things adults forgot. No. They were not alone anymore. The website had become something bigger than anyone. Imagine a place where grief became connection, a place where memories became healing. Suddenly, an employee rushed inside. Mr. Reeves, you need to see this. He looked up. The young man handed him a tablet. A new message had arrived. It was from an elderly woman. The message read, I lost my husband 3 years ago. I stopped talking about him because I thought people were tired of hearing his name. Tonight I wrote 20 pages about him. For the first time in years, I smiled while remembering him. Thank you. Silence filled the room. Sophie read the message, her eyes filled with tears. She smiled. Keanu nodded. She smiled. Another message arrived. Then another, a father, a daughter, a grandmother, a soldier. Stories came from all over the world. Some people cried while writing, some laughed, some finally shared memories they had hidden for years. Sophie looked at the screen. Do you think Dad would like this? Keanu smiled. I think he'd be proud of you. She looked down. Proud? Very. Her eyes watered. She whispered, I hope so. A month later, something even more unexpected happened. A television producer contacted Keanu. We want to interview you and Sophie. He politely declined. Then another producer called. Then another. Everyone wanted the story. Finally, after careful thought, he agreed to one interview, but only if Sophie wanted to do it. He asked her. She looked nervous. What if I say something wrong? You won't. What if people laugh? They won't. What if I cry? He smiled. Then you cry. She looked at him. That's allowed? Of course. After thinking for a long time, she nodded. I'll do it. The interview aired 1 week later. Millions watched. The host smiled warmly. So, Sophie, how did all this begin? She looked at Keanu. Then at the camera. I whispered. The audience laughed gently. She continued. I was scared my dad would disappear. Silence. And then Mr. Reeves sat on the floor with me. The audience smiled. He listened. Her eyes became emotional. No one listened like that before. Keanu looked down. The host asked, and now? She smiled. Now thousands of people remembered together. The audience erupted into applause. Then the host asked a question that surprised everyone. Sophie, what have you learned from all this? The little girl thought carefully. Then she said, I learned that being remembered is important, but listening is important too. The studio became completely silent. She continued, because if Mr. Reeves didn't stop and listen, none of this would exist. Even the host looked emotional. Some audience members wiped away tears. The interview clip spread across the world. Millions watched the little girl speak. Her words touched hearts everywhere. But late that night, after the interview ended, something happened that nobody expected. Sophie and Emma returned home. They found an envelope under their door. No name, no address. Just one sentence written neatly on the front. For Chief Memory Officer. Sophie, confused. She opened it. Inside was a letter. She began reading, then suddenly froze. Her face turned pale. Emma looked worried. What is it? Sophie slowly handed her the letter. Emma read it. Her eyes widened. The letter said, Dear Sophie, I watched your interview today. You don't know me, but your story saved my life. I was planning to give up because I thought everyone had forgotten my son after he died. Then I saw your memory book. Tonight I started writing about him instead. You reminded me that love doesn't disappear. Thank you. Sincerely. A father who finally smiled again. Silence. Emma covered her mouth. Sophie looked shocked. I helped someone. Tears filled Emma's eyes. Yes. The little girl sat down. She could barely breathe. She had spent months believing she was alone. Now she had helped a stranger, a grieving father, somewhere in the world. She whispered, Mom? Yes. Can one whisper really change everything? Emma looked at her daughter, then hugged her tightly. Sometimes. Yes. At that exact moment, Keanu's phone rang in another part of the city. It was Laura. Her voice sounded amazed. You need to sit down. He smiled. Why? The memory project just reached 1 million. Stories. Silence. 1 million. He looked out his window. He remembered the frightened little girl sitting behind the theater seats. One whisper. 1 notebook. 1 conversation. And now 1 million stories. He smiled softly, but he had no idea that an even greater surprise was waiting. Because among those 1 million stories, a message had just arrived from someone connected to Sophie's father. Someone who carried a secret that could change her life forever. The office was quiet. Outside, the city lights glittered like stars. Inside, a single laptop screen glowed. 1 million stories. 1 million memories. 1 million people remembering someone they loved. Keanu Reeves stared at the number in disbelief. Then he noticed something else. A message had been marked as urgent. Laura looked at him. You should read this one. Keanu clicked. A new page opened. The sender's name was Daniel Carter. Message. Read. Dear Mr. Reeves and Chief Memory Officer Sophie, my name is Daniel Carter. I believe I knew Sophie's father. I worked with him for several years before moving to another state. I watched Sophie's interview and recognized the stories she shared about pancakes, bad singing, and being called Captain Sophie. I have something that belongs to her. I think she deserves to have it. Silence. Keanu read the message again. Then, a third time. At the bottom was one final sentence. I have an old recording of her father's voice. Keanu slowly looked up. Laura's eyes were full of emotion. Neither of them spoke because they remembered the little girl's greatest fear. I can't hear his voice anymore. The sentence echoed in Keanu's mind. He immediately picked up his phone. Call Emma. The next afternoon, Sophie and her mother arrived at the memory project office. Sophie looked nervous. Keanu met them at the door. Captain Sophie, she smiled. Weakly, you sound serious. I have something to show you. Her eyes widened. What is it? He led them into a small meeting room. A laptop sat on the table. Sophie climbed into a chair. Emma sat beside her. Keanu gently spoke. We received a message last night. From who? A man named Daniel Carter. The name meant nothing to Sophie. She shook her head. I don't know him. He says he worked with your dad. Silence. Sophie's eyes became curious. He knew my dad. Yes. What did he say? Keanu took a slow breath. He says he has something that belongs to you. The little girl looked confused. My dad left me something? Maybe. What is it? Keanu looked directly into her eyes. Then he softly said, he has a recording of your father's voice. The room became completely silent. Sophie didn't move. She didn't blink. She simply stared. As if she had forgotten how to breathe. Emma covered her mouth. Tears instantly appeared in her eyes. No, she whispered. Sophie slowly looked at her mother. Then at Keanu. Then back at the laptop. Her voice trembled. My dad's voice? Keanu nodded. The little girl suddenly began crying. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just soft tears. The kind that come from carrying pain for a very long time. She covered her face. I thought it was gone. Emma hugged her. I know, sweetheart. I thought I'd never hear him again. Keanu sat quietly. He understood moments like this. Some things cannot be fixed, but sometimes life gives unexpected gifts, and this was one of them. An hour later, they arranged a video call with Daniel Carter. The screen turned on. A man in his 50s appeared. He had kind eyes and gray hair. The moment he saw Sophie, he smiled. You look just like him. Sophie's eyes filled with tears again. You knew my dad? Daniel nodded. For years. What was he like? The man laughed. Terrible singer. Sophie laughed through her tears. He really was. And he talked about you every single day. She blinked. He did. Every day. What did he say? Daniel's smile grew. He said his daughter was brave. Sophie's lips trembled. He called you Captain Sophie. She covered her mouth. The room became emotional. Again, Daniel wiped his eyes. He loved you more than anything. The little girl couldn't stop crying, because hearing stories from someone who knew her father made him feel close again, almost like he had walked into the room. Then Daniel held up an old flash drive. I found this while cleaning my office. What is it? Sophie asked. Years ago, your father recorded a message for his work team during a company event. She stared. He recorded himself. Daniel nodded. Your name is mentioned. Silence. Keanu looked at Emma. Emma looked at Sophie. Nobody knew what to say. Daniel smiled. Would you like to hear it? Sophie looked terrified and hopeful and nervous all at once. Finally, she whispered, yes. Daniel sent the audio file. The room became completely silent. Keanu pressed play for 2 seconds. Nothing happened. Then a man's voice filled the room. Warm, gentle, happy, double quotes. Hello, everyone. If you're listening to this, I probably couldn't attend the meeting because my daughter convinced me to eat pancakes with her. Sophie's eyes widened. Her hand flew to her mouth. She knew that voice. She knew it. Her father's laugh came next. A laugh she thought she had forgotten forever. Tears rolled down her face. Emma began crying too. The recording continued. And yes, Captain Sophie won again. The little girl gasped. It was him. It was really him. Her father. His voice. His laugh. His joy. The room felt frozen in time. Then the recording reached its final part. The father said, if Sophie ever hears this one day, I want her to know something. Silence. Everyone looked at the speaker. I don't know how old you are right now, Captain. Sophie cried harder. But if you're listening, remember something important. Another laugh. You don't need to be perfect. The room was silent. You don't need to be the smartest person. Tears rolled down every face. You only need to be kind. Pause. And don't worry about me. His voice became softer. I'll always be with you. In your laugh, your courage, and every pancake you eat. Emma completely broke down. Sophie sobbed. Even Laura wiped away tears. Then came the final sentence. I love you, Captain Sophie, more than all the stars in the sky. The recording ended. Silence. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke for nearly a minute. Then Sophie whispered something that made everyone cry. Again. I remember him. She looked at Keanu. I remember everything. Over the next few weeks, the story touched millions of people. But Keanu and Sophie kept the recording private. It belonged to her. Not to the internet. However, they did share one message, a simple sentence. Never stop telling people you love them what they mean to you. The message spread across social media. Families began recording memories. Parents recorded messages for children. Grandparents left voice notes. People called loved ones they had not spoken to in years. The memory project grew even larger. Soon, schools began participating. Hospitals joined. Community centers joined. Libraries joined. The movement spread across countries. One afternoon, Sophie visited the office again. She carried her original notebook, the very first one. The pages were worn. The corners were bent, but she protected it carefully. She sat beside Keanu. Can I ask you something? Of course. Why did you stop that night? What do you mean? At the theater. She looked at him. You heard my whisper. He nodded, but everyone else ignored it. Silence. She continued. Why did you listen? Keanu thought carefully. Then he smiled, because sometimes the quietest voices need someone to hear them the most. She looked at him for several seconds. Then she nodded. As if she understood something important. Suddenly she opened her notebook. She wrote a sentence, then handed it to him. It read, one person listened, and 1 million people remembered. Keanu smiled. That's beautiful. She grinned. I wrote it myself. I can tell. She laughed. Then an idea suddenly entered her mind. Her eyes widened. I know what we should do. What? We should have a memory day. A memory day. Yes. She jumped from her chair. A day when everyone remembers someone they love. Laura looked interested. Actually, that's a wonderful idea. Sophie smiled. We can tell stories and eat pancakes. Everyone laughed and listened to songs and write memories. Keanu added, yes. The idea quickly became reality. Months later, the first Memory Day festival was held. Thousands attended. Children, parents, grandparents, friends, entire families. Some brought photographs, some brought journals, some brought voice recordings, some simply brought memories. At sunset, thousands of lanterns glowed across the park. Sophie stood on the stage beside Keanu. She was nervous, but this time, it was a good kind of nervous. The audience became silent. She looked at the sea of people. Then spoke. My name is Sophie. Applause erupted. She smiled. A long time ago, I thought my dad would disappear if I forgot his voice. Silence. But I learned something. She looked at Keanu. Then back at the crowd. People don't disappear when we remember them. Thousands nodded. They stay with us. A tear rolled down her cheek. In our stories, more tears appeared among the audience. In our kindness, silence, and in our love, the audience stood, a standing ovation. Thousands of people clapped. Some cried. Some hugged each other. Some smiled. Then Sophie looked up at the stars, and for the first time in a very long time, she didn't feel afraid. She felt close to her father, as if he were smiling somewhere beyond the night sky. She whispered softly, I remember you, Dad. Then she looked at Keanu. Thank you for listening. He smiled. No, Captain Sophie. She looked confused. For what? He looked at the glowing lanterns. At the thousands of people remembering loved ones. At the million stories that existed because of one small whisper. Then he said, thank you for speaking. The crowd applauded again, and as thousands of lanterns rose into the night, Sophie smiled, because she finally understood something beautiful. A whisper can become a conversation. A conversation can become hope. And one act of listening can change millions of lives.